Welcome back. Good morning, Richard. It's good to see you today.
Good morning. Good to be here.
It is good to be here. It is a very early morning, and it's finally raining here in Florida. We haven't had
Did it rain all night?
most of the night. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good. Okay, so it's good soaking rain.
absolutely. And it should be raining because it is, after all, May. And but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We mentioned that's last week. And our approach, what we're doing this month, what we decided to do this month for our primary podcast each week, is to talk about mental wellness.
Right.
Everything is focusing on mental illness, mental health
Mhm.
concerns, and mental health problems and things like that. But we're going to focus on mental wellness because, well, for most of us don't have a mental illness. Most of us don't have a mental health condition, and so talking about maintaining our mental wellness can help, fend off some of those mental illness symptoms or some of those other problems that we often experience.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that frequently on the podcast, that what people need to keep in mind is that um, most of us, probably 70 to 80%, really don't have a diagnosable mental disorder. We have life problems. We call them existential problems. But most of us don't have what we would technically call a psychiatric or psychological or mental health diagnosis. But whether you do or you don't, and that's the topic that we want to pursue today, whether you are struggling with a mental illness, either a mild mental illness or severe mental illness, or you are struggling with life problems,
Mm-hmm.
there are three things that you and I have been talking about for years, that no
Years.
matter what else you do, you have to include these three things in any treatment program or any life program, if you will. No matter whether you're dealing with life issues or mental health issues, mental wellness issues, these are three things that must be included in your treatment plan.
Right. Absolutely. And as you said, we've been talking about these three things for years, and it's just good every once in a while to re re-mention them, mention them again, talk about them again, because there is consistently new information, new reports coming out
Right.
about the importance of these things. And just as a great example, the first of the three that we're going to talk about is our diet, good nutrition. You know, as
Yeah, but before we, what we have to remember is that we're going to talk about these three things, but why talk about them? Well, because the brain is an organ. I mean, we're
right,
we're talking about the brain. Let's begin with that. We're talking about the brain. The brain's an organ. And whether you're talking about your liver, it's like any other organ, a liver, your lungs, your kidneys, and you can damage any organ in one of two ways. Um, Either you can expose it to substances that damage it.
right,
For example, your lungs. If you smoke or you inhale dust, coal dust or asbestos dust, you're going to damage your lungs. If you don't drink enough water, you're going to damage your kidneys. If you drink too much alcohol, you're going to damage your liver. And so there are ways to damage your organs, either through introducing substances that do damage or by not providing substances that keep them healthy. Okay, you can either drink too little or drink too much. So, like any other organ, the brain needs to have certain things in order to operate optimally.
absolutely.
And one of those
Is nutrition, right? The way that our body processes in food is and gets the fuel that it needs to function well is through our diet. And nutrition is really important. And again, as I said a moment ago, that there's always new information coming out, and we're working on the possibility of another podcast talking about the ketogenic diet again, because there was another report that just came out recently about the benefits of a ketogenic diet on treating some serious mental health conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And it's remarkable to think that that's the type of influence that our diet can have on our mental well-being.
That's right. And we used to use the ketogenic diet for the treatment of epilepsy. And
Right.
so, but years ago, before we had as many medications as we do today, if you used a few medications and they didn't work, then we would recommend to parents that they try a ketogenic diet. So we know there is a powerful and direct influence on the brain based on what you put into your body, what you eat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the primary fuel for our body is glucose. And we get glucose from lots of sources. Our body stores it, and so there's already reserves in our body of glucose. But we primarily get it, of course, through our diet. What we consume, and
Yeah.
and
And
our
in fact, it's
entire
called dietary glucose.
right,
Yeah.
and our entire system. Entire digestive system is kind of designed to extract the glucose and the other nutrients that we need for our body to function.
Right, right. Yeah, but when you talk about glucose, the easiest way for me to think of it is you have dietary glucose and you have blood glucose.
Mhm.
Dietary glucose are the simple, we've all heard about simple and complex carbohydrates. Better to eat brown rice than white rice, better to eat wheat bread, whole wheats than whole grains than processed grains. So dietary glucose we extract from the foods in forms of carbohydrates. Blood glucose is converted from dietary glucose, and
Right.
it's the blood glucose that's going to that's going to go to the brain, but it's going to get broken down in the brain into smaller substances that the neurons actually use. So it's several step process here that you need to be aware of. So you start with dietary glucose, gets converted to blood glucose, goes to the brain, and then the brain breaks it down into smaller particles that are used by the neurons. The neurons
Right.
don't use glucose. Glucose is broken into subparticles that they can use.
Right. Yeah. Things like ATP and other proteins and things that it's broken down into so that our cells can function adequately. And so, but problems exist when we consume too much glucose or if we don't consume enough. If glucose is one thing that our body produces, but it also needs other micro and macronutrients to really function optimally. And all of this again gets to our brain, where we're primarily concerned with our conversation today. It gets to our brain so that our brain can perform all the functions that it needs to function. I mean, if you don't have a healthy diet, all of the things that our brain does, is supposed to do at least, is impaired. It interferes with thinking, it interferes with memory, both memory retrieval and memory formation. It affects learning. It affects all kinds of things that our brain is supposed to do and that we rely on our brain to do. So if we're not consuming the nutrients that we need, it's going to have a pretty detrimental, problematic effect on us. Unfortunately,
We
go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, it's okay. We can.
Oh, okay. So unfortunately, very few of us eat a healthy diet.
That's the irony of this whole thing, okay?
Right.
Because what I was going to say was, so the message is clear. You have to start with good dietary glucose. Because if we talk about this stepwise process,
Right.
dietary glucose, blood glucose goes to the brain, mixes with oxygen, and then broken down into that garbage in, garbage out
Yeah.
idea. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're not eating really nutritious foods, you're not only going to affect your liver and your stomach and your intestine and your pancreas and all the other organs involved in digestion, you're going to store too much insulin. You're going to get rid of too much. I mean, there are going to be all kinds of digestion problems, but ultimately, you're going to run into brain problems because you're not giving your brain the kind of high quality glucose that it craves, that it needs to function optimally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have to
And
have
you,
a steady supply of nutritious foods so that your brain can work the way that it's supposed to work. Um, and it's all the basics that everybody already knows,
Right.
fruits
Right.
and
Right.
vegetables, lean proteins. You mentioned whole grains a few minutes ago. Even
Right.
healthy fats are important, but it's like we all know this stuff, but for whatever reason, we don't do it.
You began to say a minute ago, unfortunately, even though
Right.
we know, unfortunately, what do the data tell us?
That like 10%, 1 in 10 Americans eat the recommended amount of complex carbohydrates, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it's most of us, 6 out of 10, 60% of us eat far more sugars than what is recommended.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if we
So
just look at the sugar part, it's like we're doing far more than we're supposed to do.
right. Now that's the irony of this is that here's what you should do. You need these kind of carbohydrates, but yet only 1 in 10 Americans are doing that. And most of us are consuming these very refined carbohydrates that are not good for your digestive system, certainly not good for your brain. Okay.
Right. Yeah. If
So
you think about a can of Mountain Dew, a
yeah,
can of
right.
Mountain Dew has more, I think the statistic is like it has more than twice the amount of sugar that you should have for an entire day.
Right.
One can,
One can.
one can.
Right. And there are people who drink multiple cans, right? So your body's going to do something with that stuff and it's probably going to damage. So what we're saying here is you're depriving your body, your brain of what it needs, and you're putting into it what's going to damage it. All right. So you need to be, doesn't matter whether what you're dealing with, you have to have a steady supply of highly nutritious foods.
Right. And again, we're talking about good balance with fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and
Yeah.
grains and healthy fats. Those are all the really important things that need to be in our diet.
Exactly. Right. Right.
So
What's the second thing?
the second thing is good sleep.
Right.
Again, something that is highly over that we you can't overstate enough, but yet again,
Right.
something that people tend to sacrifice. And I will admit that you and I are just as guilty of this as everybody else. Even though
Yeah,
we don't,
we started recording at 5:07 a.m. Okay.
right, on a Saturday.
So we talk about on a Saturday morning. So
Yeah,
guilty as charged, but we know about sleep and normally we practice good sleep hygiene. And what is good sleep hygiene?
right. So you think about sleep, there's like everything else in our body, sleep goes through cycles. There's light sleep and deep sleep and REM sleep. And we all know that there's these different types of sleep, but our body goes through the cycle of sleep 3 or 4 or 5 times every night. Each cycle takes between 90 minutes and 2 hours, somewhere around there. But as you go through each cycle, there's 4 stages. And
Right.
as you think about your sleep throughout the night, there's that you're just dozing off period. Well, as your body goes through the entire cycle, you get back to that space again, that stage again, and that's when you're moving around and you're kind of wake up and you might look over at the clock and that kind of thing. But that's where you're back at stage one again, and you do that 4 or 5 times throughout the night.
Right.
Stage two, you're
You know,
getting relaxed. Yeah,
yeah, you mentioned rhythm, the cycles,
yeah,
okay? And one of the things we want to emphasize is that our bodies love rhythms.
right.
There's something about being on a regular schedule. You have sleep cycles, you have these normal rhythms. We have seasonal rhythms, we have day-night rhythms. Our body loves rhythms, and sleep is one of those cycles, one of those rhythms that you need to establish across a lifetime. And if you live in a chaotic environment, if you're constantly disrupting those cycles, you're going to run into problems. That's why it's hard for people to work at night, to be on the night shift, is that it interrupts those cycles. Getting kids used to a cycle, get them used to rhythms. We talk about keep the same sleep cycle in the summertime as summer approaches. Keep your kids on the same schedule. We all do better when we're in those rhythmic patterns. Okay,
Right.
whether it's sleep, the wake, the seasonal patterns, the day-night cycle, the sleep cycles, that there's a rhythm here that you want to maintain across time.
Right. People always complain, or there's this, universal almost dread for Mondays. Well, the
Yeah,
reason that most people hate Mondays so much is because you spend Monday through Friday, or we'll say Sunday night through Thursday night, going to bed early so that you can get up early and go to work, and you go through that routine. Well, by the time Thursday comes around, you're your body is getting used to that. Well, then what
right.
happens
You
on
get used
Friday
to the
night?
rhythms. Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then what happens Friday night? You stay up half the night. You stay up, 3 hours later than you usually do. You do it again on Saturday, and you
Yeah,
sleep later the next morning, and your body's like, whoa, that's different. Okay. And then for Sunday night, you try to go to bed early again and try to get up
mhm.
early on Monday morning. And your body isn't, you've shaken your body. You have shook it loose of that pattern, that rhythm that it's developed over the course of the week. You've taken it out of that, and now you're trying to put it back into that.
That's right.
We should
So you
have
may
the cycle all week long.
That's right. So you maintain the pattern, the cycles, the rhythms, maintain those rhythms all in each day. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's why Mondays are so hard, because you disrupt those rhythms and your body has to reestablish those over a couple of days. And then what happens? Another weekend comes. You go on vacation and you completely disrupt all these rhythms. That's
Right.
what's so difficult. And you have to restore those. You have to restore those rhythmic patterns that the body loves so much.
Absolutely. And, I was talking a minute ago about the different stages, and the two really important stages that we have to think about with sleep are stages 3 and 4, which are the really deep, restorative sleep. That part of the sleep cycle is so critically important. And it's actually the part of the sleep cycle that's really affected by when somebody has sleep apnea, for example. The person rarely is able to get into that deep sleep cycle or stage of the cycle. And so it interferes with the restorative and regenerative processes that happen when we sleep. And so it's really important that we get to that. And that's why, again, when people have things like sleep apnea, you start to see some of that brain fog and some of those other problems, is because their brain isn't able to get that restorative sleep that it needs.
That's right. And that happens, that can last up to a half hour, 20 to 40 minutes, that stage 3 of sleep. And that's that deep restorative sleep when you get up feeling like you've had a good night's sleep. Okay.
Right.
Because right after that is right after you finish that very deep restorative sleep, you get into what most people know about rapid eye movement, REM sleep. Okay. And this is where you consolidate all of the cognitive functions. And this can last up to an hour, but that's when your brain um, remembers things. That's when you store memories.
Right.
That's when you clean up all the junk in your brain and you start to put things in the right place.
Right.
So that's why the patterns are so important, because you need to go through each cycle so that the brain can do its work during each cycle. And if you're interrupting those cycles, or you drink too much, you're interrupting those cycles, or you eat too much before you go to bed, you're messing with those rhythms, you're messing with those cycles, and you can't do that. And you have to sleep enough hours to go through enough cycles for the brain to do its repair work during the night.
Absolutely. And sleep affects every bodily system.
Everything.
It affects everything
Right.
in the body, because this is a time when it helps get rid of toxins, and sort of just rejuvenates things for the next day. Think about times when your body hasn't felt right, and you're like, I just need a good night's sleep, and then you wake up the next morning and your body feels a bit better.
Right.
This is really important for your entire body, but especially for your brain. And there's been plenty of research that supports the idea that getting adequate sleep improves brain performance, it improves your mood, it improves your overall mental wellness. It is critical to just having that healthy, a healthy life, but certainly healthy mental wellness.
That's right. Just like food, when we talk about food, if you can damage your brain by putting things in your brain that are not good for it, like drugs and alcohol. Same with sleep. You need to have you can do things. If you don't sleep for 3 or 4 days, if you keep people up for you can actually have a seizure. Okay, the brain will just short circuit if you're not giving it that rest that it needs to recollect, to reorganize itself. You can actually begin to have seizures. So we know that just like with nutrition, there is a direct effect on the brain if you don't get enough sleep or if your sleep is disrupted in some way.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about one of the worst forms of torture is sleep deprivation.
Keeping people
You know,
awake.
they just keep them awake, bright lights and loud music and stuff to keep people awake, and
Right.
that can harm people pretty significantly. So now,
Right.
the third leg of this stool that we're talking about today is we talked about diet, we talked about sleep. So of course, the third one is exercise. Again, something that everyone knows that we should be doing on a regular basis. Everyone knows that you should get about 30 minutes or so of some type of exercise daily. If not daily, at least 4 or 5 times a week.
Right.
Some type of moderate intensity exercise. And again, the research is pretty consistent that this is very important for mental well-being.
Right. That's right. It's like everything else. Your brain needs to have these periods. What does exercise do for you? Well, first of all, it relaxes you. Okay. It gives you energy. You sleep better. If you're tired, and how do you get tired? You get tired, but you wear yourself out with exercise. Okay. You sleep better, so that helps with that. You have you can remember better. You're more relaxed. You're in a positive mood. The more you exercise, the better you're going to feel, just generally. It doesn't matter, again, doesn't matter whether you're dealing with a mental illness or not. You're going to feel better if you're exercising. You are not going to feel like exercising. It's not something that you really want to do every day. It is something that you have to force yourself to do until it becomes part of your daily routine. Nobody wants to go out and run when it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity, but you have to find ways to move your body, to get your joints loosened, to get to wear yourself out so that you can sleep well.
Right. Absolutely. And some of the research that is available on the benefits of exercise, again, has been very consistent over the years. I teach a exercise and sports psychology college course here at a local college. And one of the articles I share with them is this really interesting article that was published a number of years ago now about the benefits of weightlifting. And it's fascinating, Richard, because it says that if you just go into the gym or wherever and you lift weights, weight resistance, it doesn't have to be a lot of weight. It just has to be a little bit of weight resistance, like 2 or 3 times a week for maybe 15 to 20 minutes each session. It has a significant effect on not only relieving depressive symptoms, but preventing depressive symptoms. It's
Right.
not,
Right. That,
as
right.
the research is saying, it's not a lot. There's not a lot that you have to do. It's just you have to do something. And that's really the key that we want everybody to understand is you don't have to do a lot, just do something, and it will make things better.
Right. We all know the benefits of meditation and yoga and those sorts of things that we talk about frequently. What does meditation do? Meditation clears your head out. You clear stuff out of your head. Think about something else, either your yoga pose or your meditation or your prayer or your singing. You're putting something else in the brain to give it a rest.
Mhm.
That's what exercise does.
Right.
When you're in the gym and you're counting the number of reps, you're thinking about counting the number of reps. When you're out going for a walk, your vista, what you're looking at, is constantly changing, and you're constantly tuned into that. And you become aware of your environment. Well, if you're doing that, you're not thinking about all those things that trouble you, that bother you, that depress you, that make you anxious. You're replacing all those things with other thoughts, other visions, other sights, other sounds. So whether you're exercising in a gym, it doesn't matter. You're giving your brain a rest from everything else that's causing you trouble.
That's right. That's right. So as we wrap all of this together, and again, we've talked about this many times before, but the research on the benefits of having a healthy diet, a good sleep routine, and a good exercise routine um, are conclusive. They're very consistent, and they have been consistent for years and years and years.
Mhm.
Those lifestyle choices, sleeping well, eating well, exercising, research again has repeatedly demonstrated that it is as good, if not better, than medication, than cognitive behavioral therapy, which everybody thinks
Mhm.
is, the cure for everything. Um,
Right,
it's as good, if not better, than those treatments that everybody's touting and everybody's spending a fortune on every
right.
day. And it's just things that you can do on your own at home.
Exactly. So what I like about these things is what you just said. The lifestyle changes are as effective as medications and cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay. So no matter what, um, I think it would be in everybody's best interest to take a serious look at all three of these and get your body back into rhythms: nutrition, sleep, exercise. Your body loves that sort of predictable, repetitive rhythms across days and weeks and months. Um, Establish these good routines, and your body is going to your body will repay you. It will be as effective as taking medication. So I would say begin with these three and include them in any treatment plan you have.
Absolutely. Whether you're doing medication and some other forms of therapy or not, yeah, incorporate these three things because it's only going to make things better.
Going to make it better, right?
Absolutely. All right.
Okay.
That's it for today. We will be back next week with some more conversation about your mental wellness. And we will also have a midweek podcast again this week on another new diagnosis that
Another new
is
diagnosis, right?
making its way on the interwebs. So we look forward to that dropping on Wednesday. So, but until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.